Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to use Lighthouse CI and GitHub Actions to analyze your web application's performance. We are also going to see how you can convert an Angular application into a progressive web app. So without further ado, let's get started. But hey, if you have not subscribed to my channel yet, please do, because it helps me and it helps you get more videos and content from me. So now we can get started. First of all, let's talk about why performance matters. Why do we have to talk about performance or anything with our web applications? So if we talk about some surveys, if we talk about Pinterest actually increased their search engine traffic by 15% when they reduced the perceived wait times by 40%. So you can see that just reducing these matrices can basically allow companies to increase their conversion rate, and this is pretty awesome. On the other hand, if we talk about BBC found that they lost an additional 10% of users for every additional second their site took to load. So the site load time is really important metric, and you can see how BBC found this out. Now, the thing is that it's not actually just about money or getting revenue for your product. It's also about providing a really good experience to the end users for which we are creating the products. Now, Lighthouse basically allows us to see these reports, and we can analyze different matrices using these. So for instance, you could see what are the opportunities in which our application can improve, what are the areas that are red or can be improved, and what are the things that we are already doing good in. So we are going to go deep into that later on. So a question is it important to analyze the performance often? Do we have to do that every day, every week, every month? How does that go? And the thing is that everything in today's world is actually automated. So we have CI, CD configured, and we can run tests and create builds and deploy them in a go. And if we talk about what benefits CI/CD has, these are a few of them. You can analyze the performance of your web applications before even they're released to the end users, and you can make sure that most of the users that are out there get the best experience out of your products. Now let's talk about Lighthouse, which is one side of the puzzle. So Lighthouse is an open source project by Google, and it allows you to analyze your web application's performance. It provides audits for you, for instance, performance, accessibility, SEO, if your web app is a progressive web app or not, and we are going to see a lot of those things in the talk. The fun thing about Lighthouse is that it can be used in many ways. So for developers, you might already know that you have Chrome DevTools in the Chrome browser. So you can just go to any website, open up the browser, go to this audits tab, which is now renamed to Lighthouse tab, and then you can generate a report and you can see all of the matrices right there. The second thing that we have for Lighthouse is that you can also use that as a node package into your node project. So you can do is npm install -g lighthouse. If you install this globally, then you can just run this anyways without even having a project. And then we also have a way of using Chrome extension. So if you are not a developer or if you want quick access, you can just go to any website. You have to have this extension installed, and then you can click that button, click the generate report, and you're good to go seeing the reports. And when you open a report, this is what you see. You see these reports with performance, accessibility, best practices, SEO, if your web app is a PWA or not, and you can also see some matrices in details when you scroll down. And the great thing about Lighthouse CI is that it can be integrated with a bunch of providers, for instance, Travis CI, Circle CI, or GitHub Actions, and we are right now interested in the GitHub Actions. So let's do it. So the other side of the puzzle is GitHub Actions. What are those? So GitHub Actions is a recently released feature by GitHub which provides a really automated workflow. So whenever you push your code or you create a branch, depends on your configurations, GitHub basically spins up a server with a particular operating system, and then it runs your commands in that machine. So you can do tests, you can create production builds, and also you can deploy them to your own server, for instance. So GitHub Actions also allow you to have these checks on your PRs. So if you have an open source project and you want to verify the contributions from the contributors, you can basically put these checks, and then whenever someone creates a PR, all these checks would run and you'll know if it's safe to merge their PRs or not. Now this is an example workflow and we are going to go deep on this, but in general it basically has this on rule which basically tells when the workflow would run, and then it has a set of jobs which you provide, and then you basically clone your project using this action and then you run different commands. So we are going to go deep on this, don't worry. Now what do we do exactly in this particular talk? In this talk, we are going to do a couple of things. We are going to assert some rules. So we are going to put a rule around first Contentful Paint. It should be less than 4 seconds. And then we are going to assert that the score for performance and accessibility is 90% or greater than 0.9. And we are going to assert that the score for SEO is 100% or 1 in the code. We are going to assert that our application is a PWA and it's installable. It is available offline and it also has a service worker. So these are the assertions that we are going to make. So let's get started. I'm sure that you're as excited as I am for this talk. So what we are going to do here is that we are going to start with a fresh Angular v10 project, and then we are going to analyze the performance as we go. So if we just create a project with Angular CLI using ng new, this is what we get. It has a really nice UI, but let's talk about the performance. So if we go to DevTools and if we generate a report out of it, this is what we see. It starts running the audits, and then once it's done, this is what we have. So you can see that it's running on localhost 4200. The performance score is 30% or 0.3. And then we have 95 here, 93 here, and 89 for SEO. And our application is not a PWA. One more thing in the performance is that you can see first Contentful Paint is 1.0 seconds and the first meaningful paint is 9.0 seconds. So it's actually huge, and you can see that there are a bunch of other red flags here as well. Now how do we improve this? Consider this, that this view that you see or this audit that you see is the development build. It's not the production optimized build by Angular. So first of all, let's try and see what does the production build look like. So in order to do that, what we will do is that we'll just install this HTTP server package globally in our machine. Then we'll run ng build -- prod, and then we will spin up the server using this command. So it needs to know what is the disk folder and inside where we have the index.html file. So once we have done this, this is how it would look. The server will spin up on localhost 8080, and then when we generate the report, this is what we get. You can see that the performance score increased significantly from 30 to 88. The other matrices are same, but you can see that the first meaningful paint actually came from 9 seconds to 2.1. The speed index also increased, and the other matrices are also better than before. So let's talk about setting up Lighthouse CI with GitHub Actions and combining things together. So for that, you have to create a workflow YAML file in your project. And the way to do that is that you first create a folder named .github in your project. Then you create a folder named workflows inside the GitHub folder. And then inside the workflows folder, you create the main.yaml. And then you put this code inside that file. So what we have here is that the name of the pipeline, then we have on, and this on basically has this push and pull request. Now what we are saying is that for every push on master and for every pull request against the master branch runs this whole workflow. And then we have jobs. So what we have is that we have a Lighthouse CI job, and then inside we are telling GitHub to use the Linux operating system or Ubuntu. And then inside we have then other steps. So one step is actions checkout v2. And this action basically clones your code or copies your code or downloads your code from GitHub repository to this machine that GitHub just spun up. Then it installs the Node.js into this Ubuntu machine. So it installed the 10.x version of Node.js into the machine. And then finally it runs our commands. So it runs npm install to install all the package dependencies. And then it runs this custom command that I created called npm run build prod. So finally it runs the Lighthouse CI on the build that we have created, and we are going to see where we are telling Lighthouse to find the build and execute the audits on them. So one thing that I mentioned was that this custom command, which is build::pod, and I just put it in the package.json. So basically it just creates the production build for Angular. Now let's talk about the configuration for Lighthouse CI. This is the file that you want to create for the configuration. So you need to create a lighthouse rc.js, and then inside we are going to export this object using module.exports. So it has a property CI, and inside we have collect and number of runs. So why are we using this number of runs? I have run the audit on my machine. If you have a better machine, you will have a different audit. If you have a machine with some lower specs, you might have a different results. So the GitHub machines use an average kind of machine to make sure that it reflects what your end users would have in the end. But in order to be more accurate, it allows you to run this audit not one time but multiple times. By default, it runs it 3 times, but you can also be even more accurate by providing 5 or 7, depends on what you're comfortable with. So it runs it multiple times, and then for every result of each time, it combines all of those and takes the average out of it, which is great. The second thing is this static dist directory. You need to tell Lighthouse CI where is the Angular production build. So it's in the dist ng GitHub Lighthouse. This is what we use with the HTTP server as well. So you need to provide this status dist directory. And finally, we have the assert and assertions. So this assertions object basically contains all the rules that we want to test against. So we have the first Contentful Paint here, and we are saying, hey, warn us if the value is less than 4 seconds. So the max numeric value is 4 seconds. Okay. Now we are also talking about temporary public storage here with upload. What this does is that once the audit finishes, Lighthouse CI uploads the report to a temporary public storage, and you can click on the link and go there and see all the report and perhaps share it with your teams as well. Or you can configure it to upload this on your own server as well. But I use temporary public storage all the time. Now, once you have done all of this, you should see upon creating a PR that this check is now included. So you can see that Lighthouse CI pull request in progress. So this pipeline starts running, and then once it has run, you can see that it passes, and now you should be able to merge this. Now, if you go inside the pipeline, you will see that all of the steps that we mentioned in the workflow YAML, we have them here running. So you can see that it runs the checkout action, and then it installs Node.js, then it runs npm install, and finally it runs the Lighthouse CI. So finally you can see here that it ran 3 times. You can see it running Lighthouse 3 times, running number 1, running number 2, number 3, and finally it says all results pass because we do have a Contentful Paint less than 4 seconds. And then once it's done, you can see this is the link that we can click to see all of the reports. So when we click this, this is what we get. You can see that the performance is 100 and accessibility is 95, best practice is 100, SEO 91, and now we have all of these things green. And that's because it ran it 3 times and got a better average of what should happen. And still we don't have the app set as a PWA, but we'll do it. Now, implementing the full-fledged audit is what we are going to do. So first of all, we need to update the lighthouse rc.js with these assertions. So what we do here is that we have the first Contentful Paint, then we are adding categories performance. The minimum score is 0.9, which means 90% at least, and the accessibility is also 90%. The SEO is 100% as we discussed, or the minimum score is 1. And then for the progressive web app, we have installable manifest, offline start URL, service worker, and works offline. All of these things are going to be tested for the audit. Now, when we create the PR after updating the Lighthouse RC, the pipeline will start, and now the PR fails with the additional assertions. So you can see that categories SEO was expected to be greater than or equal to 1, but it was found that it is 0.91. You can also see that it ran it 3 times. So what were the values of each time? it's 0.91, 0.91, 0.91, and then it takes average of all those. Installable manifest is also failing. Offline start URL fails, service worker fails, works offline fails. All of these assertions are failing right now, and we are going to fix this. Now, this is good and bad at this moment. Why? Because we know what to fix, and bad is that we haven't fixed it yet. So let's do it. Let's improve the web app. Now, the first thing that we will do is that convert our application into a PWA, and with Angular, it's super duper easy. What we need to do is that we need to run the ng-add at angular/pwa with specifying the project in our project, and then what it does is that it installs the PWA packages. It also creates some files for us. It updates the files within the project to integrate all of that, and it does everything magically for us, and then our application is basically PWA compatible. Now, ng-add at Angular PWA does the following things. It adds the Angular service worker package into the project. It enables the service worker in the app. It updates the index.html by including a link to the manifest file, which is important if you want to add your web page into your home screen on Android, which is add to home screen feature. It also adds meta tags for the theme color. Using this, you can kind of style the title bars or the status bar in the mobile phones. So this helps with that. And it also installs the icon files to support the PWA. It also creates the service worker configuration files for Angular to analyze, hey, which resources do I need to cache, so I don't have to fetch them every time someone opens the application. Now, this whole command or this whole process basically fixed a lot of things for us except the SEO. So if we open the report right now, what we see now is that our application is a progressive web app. If we scroll down, you will see that the application is now fast and reliable. So all of these traits are basically related to PWA. And one important thing that you analyze is that this says fail arrow pass, which means that previously it was failing and now it's passing. And it's interesting because this whole report is basically a comparison of the current push that I have done and the previous report that was generated. So it's really interesting to see what changed in this particular audit. But what about SEO? So for SEO, we need a minimum 1 score. And in order to see what we can improve, we can go back to the build step. You can see that it's 0.9. We need it to be 1. And if we go back to the report, in the SEO section, we can see that we have 3 issues. 1, the document does not have a meta description tag. The document does not have a valid canonical URL. The document doesn't have a robot.txt. So these are the 3 things missing that we can add. So first of all, for the meta tag, it's really simple. We need to add this into the index.html. So we just do meta and then name with description starting with a capital D. This is important. And then we specify the description in the content attribute. Then we can add the canonical URL. So you can study what canonical URL is and what is the best value for that in this case, and you can put this tag into the index.html as well. Now the last thing is robots.txt file. So this robots.txt file tells search engines or web crawlers which pages to index or crawl and which to ignore. So we are saying that for the Google bot, do not allow this folder in our server, and for all the search engines or crawlers, allow the root folder. So that's that. Now, one important thing to notice is that if we add a robots.txt file in our project, it will not end up automatically in the Angular production build. And that's because Angular does not know about that robots.txt file or to copy that into the production. So in order to do that, we need to provide this file's path into angular.json inside this build and inside the assets. So Angular automatically copies this file when creating the production build. Once this ends up in the production folder, this also ends up in the Lighthouse CI pipeline, and then we will not see any errors there. And after all of this, this is what we get. We ran the Lighthouse CI, it ran 3 times, all the results pass, and now we have a report to look at. So if we go to the report, you will see that this little arc that you see here tells that the SEO increased 9%, which is from 91 to 100%. And this is amazing. This is actually what we wanted. And if we see the individual report, you will see that the SEO is now 100 and we finally have success. Awesome. And guess what? This is all that I wanted to talk about in this session. So in this really small session, I introduced you to GitHub Actions, Lighthouse CI, told you how you can create those files and start experimenting with stuff. And now you should be able to create your own pipelines with the performance edits that you want for improving your user experience and also your web applications performance. So here, I'm Mohammad Ayaz. I'm a senior software engineer at Klarna. I make videos that teach everyone out there different cool things about web, Flutter, and whatnot. And if you have not followed me, follow me on Twitter, see my GitHub, follow me there, see my projects, give them stars, use them. And also, if you want to add me on Facebook, why not? And if you have not subscribed to the channel, you're gonna miss a lot of things. So quickly do it. And I'm gonna see you in the next video.